Have you ever had the feeling that something important is being erased from your mind? Like a thin fog covering your thoughts, making everything more blurry and distant. It's not just fatigue, it's something deeper, more unsettling. It's like you're the only sheep that suddenly breaks away from the line, looks around, and realizes the world is out of alignment, while everyone else keeps marching forward, without questioning, without noticing what's being lost. Millions of people feel this now, but few can name what's happening. It's as if our ability to remember, to feel deeply, and to be ourselves is being slowly erased in silence. This isn't just another video about modern problems. It's a warning about something happening right under our noses, something that might be transforming your identity without you realizing it. What's happening is more subtle, more invasive. You notice it when you try to remember how you felt a few years ago, or when you try to recapture that excitement for simple things. The memory is there, but it seems wrapped in cotton. Mental fog has become so common that we've started accepting it as normal. We wake up tired, spend the day on autopilot, and when we get home, we can barely remember what we did. It's not just the details that escape, it's the flavor of the experience that's been lost. This loss doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual process, almost imperceptible, like when you only realize you're getting nearsighted after everything in the distance is already blurred. Your identity, your passions, your natural instincts are being slowly erased, replaced by a more faded, domesticated, molded version of what you once were. You still seem to move along with the herd, but something has already changed. Like that black sheep that feels the steps have lost their meaning, even while continuing to walk. On the outside, everything looks the same, but inside, the disconnection has already begun. What's most disturbing is that this fog isn't an accident. It's not just a side effect of modern life. It's the result of a system that profits from our apathy, confusion, and forgetting who we are. And when we forget who we are, we become much easier to influence, to control, to lead. Do you think you choose what you see, what you think, what you feel? The reality is quite different. There's a filter constantly operating around you, deciding what reaches you and what gets blocked. This filter isn't neutral. It has an agenda, and it's almost never yours. The algorithms that govern your social media, your internet searches, even the news that appears on your phone have been programmed to create a specific reality. They don't show the world as it is, but as someone wants you to believe it is. It's like living inside a transparent bubble, thinking you see everything, but only seeing what you're allowed to. This manipulation of perception is extremely sophisticated. It doesn't force you to believe something obviously false. Instead, it limits your options, narrows your view, and makes you believe you're choosing freely, when actually you're just selecting from pre-molded alternatives. What's most impressive is how this weakens your ability to question. When everything you see confirms a specific narrative, when your doubts are ridiculed or silenced, when alternatives don't even reach your radar, you stop looking, you stop questioning, and without questioning, there's no real freedom. The manipulation of reality is just the beginning. What's happening goes beyond controlling what you see. It's an internal restructuring, a subtle reprogramming of who you are. Your instincts, those gut feelings that used to guide you, are being systematically weakened. Remember that inner voice that used to alert you when something was wrong? That feeling in your stomach that made you question certain situations? This warning system, shaped by millions of years of evolution, is being silenced. In its place, you receive external commands about what to feel, fear, desire. The erosion of identity doesn't happen through direct attacks. It happens through small daily concessions. A bit of conformity here, a denial of intuition there. Every time you ignore your instincts to fit in, every time you silence your doubts to belong, a piece of your authenticity is corroded. The result is the feeling of living a role that isn't yours. You do what needs to be done, fulfill your functions, but without the sensation of real presence. It's like watching your own life from the outside, recognizing the actor, but without access to the original script. Your body feels something is wrong, even when your mind can't explain it. The nervous system remains on alert, reacting to threats you can't see clearly. It's a constant tension that manifests in various ways: insomnia, sudden irritation, anxiety with no apparent reason. Constant stimulation keeps your body in a state of chronic stress. It's not the acute, natural stress of real danger that mobilizes energy and then passes. It's a low, continuous stress, like background noise that never stops, keeping you always a little off your center. This overload on the nervous system impairs your ability to process and store memories. When the body lives in survival mode, there's no energy left to register experiences with depth. Everything becomes superficial, fleeting, without lasting marks. Even more unsettling is the emotional oscillation without clear reason. One moment you feel apathetic, the next, overtaken by disproportionate irritation over something trivial. These highs and lows aren't natural. They're signs of a system constantly manipulated, pulled from one side to another, without finding balance. When we can't focus deeply, our brain stops forming consistent memories. It's like writing life with disappearing ink. Experiences pass, but they don't remain. They don't leave marks, don't integrate into your story. Fragmented attention is one of the main causes of this loss. When we're pulled from stimulus to stimulus, our attention divides, and the brain can't transform what it lives into something memorable. Everything is processed shallowly, without depth. This creates a life that slips through your fingers. You may have lived incredible moments, but when you try to access them, they're blurred, like out-of-focus photos. It's not that you didn't live, it's that you couldn't register clearly. The most serious consequence is the loss of identity continuity. Our memories aren't just records of the past, they're the foundation of our sense of who we are. When they become fragmented and shallow, our identity also fragments. We lose the thread of our own story, the feeling of being continuous through time. The forgetting surpasses day-to-day experiences. It reaches the essence of what you are. That natural curiosity, the dreams that moved you, the excitement for simple things. Everything seems distant, almost inaccessible. Like an important dream you try to remember, but the details escape. This loss of motivation isn't depression in the clinical sense. It's something more subtle. You continue functioning, accomplish tasks, interact. But that inner spark, the fire that made you feel alive, seems muffled. It didn't disappear, but was covered by layers of distractions and obligations. What's most disturbing is when you try to remember how you were before. You search for that feeling of genuine enthusiasm you used to have. You know it existed. You have vague glimpses of who you once were. But it's like trying to hold water in your hands. The more you try, the more it escapes. This erasure of the self creates a void, and where there's a void, something will come to fill it. When you lose access to your own essence, to your authentic motivations, you become vulnerable to accepting those that come from outside. You start wanting what they tell you to want, feeling what they tell you to feel, being what they tell you to be. With identity weakened, confused, and inaccessible, you become fertile ground for reprogramming. External narratives occupy the space left by your personal story. You adopt, without realizing, values that didn't come from you, desires that aren't yours. This reprogramming isn't explicit. It happens through subtle repeated messages, social pressure disguised as consensus, emotional manipulation disguised as care. You're constantly bombarded with versions of who you should be, what you should want, what you should fear. The process is so gradual that you don't notice when you stop being who you were and start being an edited version, a version that fits better with others' interests. Your opinions echo foreign voices. Your fears reflect threats pointed out by others. Your dreams look too much like what they're trying to sell you. Reprogramming works best when you believe you're in control. When you feel you think freely, question on your own, choose with autonomy. Even when all this happens within limits imposed from outside. It's the perfect illusion of freedom within an invisible prison. If something in you has stirred up to this point, if some internal part whispered, "I recognize this," then there's hope. This reaction isn't by chance. It's proof that your true memory still exists. Maybe buried, but not destroyed. You're still there, behind the layers of confusion and manipulation. The first step to getting out of the fog is recognizing you're in it. And this isn't easy, because it was made to seem normal, inevitable. But the instant you see beyond what's on the surface, when you question whether things need to be this way, you've already taken the most important step. Consciousness is like a muscle that strengthens with use. The more you practice observing your own thoughts, questioning your reactions, investigating the origin of your beliefs, the clearer becomes the difference between what's yours and what was placed there by external forces. It's a process that requires practice, patience, and courage. But the more you exercise this internal gaze, the firmer becomes your presence in the world. This awakening of consciousness is rarely smooth. In fact, it can be quite disturbing because it forces you to face the possibility that much of your life may not have been the result of authentic decisions. But it's also deeply liberating, because when you start to see, even gradually, you're already approaching who you really are. Not the version molded by the world, but the intact core that survived behind the layers. The recovery of your authentic identity doesn't happen by chance. It requires intention. It demands conscious effort, constant practices, and a firm willingness to dig deep. It's not about finding something new, but removing what was placed on top. It's excavation work. And here are the 6 essential steps of this journey back to yourself. First, see the fog. Develop the ability to observe your own thoughts and emotions with detachment, like a scientist observing a phenomenon. When you realize there's a you that can observe your own thoughts, you understand you are not them. And in that space between what you feel and who you are, the freedom to choose how to react is born. Second, drop the mask. Stop pretending everything's okay when it's not. Stop smiling to please when what you feel is discomfort. Stop agreeing just to avoid conflict. This isn't rebellion, it's emotional integrity. It's not about being rude or creating unnecessary conflicts, but about stopping the sacrifice of your truth in the name of acceptance. Third, return to the body. Your mind can get lost in illusions, but the body knows. The body feels before you understand. The tension in your shoulders, the tightness in your stomach, the knot in your throat. All of these are messages. When something resonates with you, your chest expands. When it doesn't, it closes. Learning to listen to these signals is essential to recovering your internal compass. Fourth, recover what was buried. Do an archaeology of yourself. Dig through the forgotten layers of your history. What excited you before they taught you it shouldn't? What dreams did you abandon for seeming too foolish? Return to these memories. They didn't die. They're asleep. Fifth, make the simple sacred. Life doesn't need big events to be profound. When you're present, even drinking a glass of water can be a transformative experience. Sacredness is in the attention. Cultivating presence in daily life is one of the greatest acts of resistance against a world that wants to distract you all the time. Sixth, leave a trail. Record your journey. Write, draw, record, sing. The format doesn't matter. What matters is creating evidence of your real presence. Every word put on paper, every conscious gesture, every authentic confession is living proof that you're rebuilding yourself. Writing something simple like, "I remember," might seem trivial, but it's a gesture of enormous power. It's a declaration of existence. It's you anchoring yourself in the real, in the present, in your own perception, and refusing the imposed narrative that your story is irrelevant. The trails you leave become anchors. They're tangible reminders of who you are and who you're becoming. When the fog returns, when confusion tries to make you doubt, you can return to these trails and say, "I know what I felt. I know what I lived. I know who I am." The repetition of this practice strengthens not only your memory, but your identity under construction. When you write "I remember today" and read it tomorrow, You're drawing a line between yesterday's you and today's. You're building an internal bridge that keeps your story alive and your presence firm. These trails are also forms of active resistance. They combat the forces that want to make you forget. Every time you write about what you really felt, thought, or perceived, you're telling the system, I see. It's an act of silent rebellion, an affirmation of autonomy, a refusal to accept an edited version of your life. Some questions have the power to break spells, to dissolve illusions you didn't even know were there, to open internal doors that were closed for so long you forgot where they are. And these questions, though uncomfortable, are necessary. What have you forgotten about yourself? What traits, interests, or dreams were gradually silenced over time? Not everything was forgotten by choice. Some things were erased by conditioning, by social pressure, by fear of rejection. What was silenced within you? What voice stopped being heard? What questions did you stop asking? What impulses did you repress until you believed they no longer existed? Silencing is rarely explicit. It almost always comes disguised as maturity, prudence, or adaptation. Did you let it go, or was it taken from you? This might be the most uncomfortable question, because it forces you to look honestly at what was choice and what was imposition. The answer is never simple, but facing this ambiguity is essential to start rebuilding an authentic life. These questions don't have easy or quick answers. They are rare and sacred seeds. They need to be planted in your consciousness carefully and then watered with attention, silence, and courage. They don't flourish under pressure. They grow slowly, in their own time, like truths that emerge in layers. As you cultivate them, you notice nuances that were previously invisible. And the deeper you explore these questions, the clearer becomes the line that separates who you really are from the version the world tried to mold you into. Identity doesn't fall apart all at once, like a switch being turned off. It dissolves in silence, grain by grain, through small concessions that seem harmless in the moment, but that, when accumulated, distance you from yourself. And one day, in front of the mirror, you realize you no longer recognize who's there. Not because of a specific detail, but because of a diffuse absence. Every time you agreed with something that went against what you believed, every time you pretended to like something just to fit in, every time you silenced a doubt to avoid bothering anyone, you handed over a fragment of your integrity. Individually, these gestures seemed small, maybe even necessary, but as a whole, they were small sacrifices made on the altar of convenience, at the cost of your authenticity. This fragmented process is particularly treacherous because it maintains the appearance of continuity. You continue recognizing your face, your habits, your name, but inside, something was edited, as if the soundtrack had changed, even though the scenery still looks the same. Adaptation becomes disguise, flexibility transforms into amnesia, and you start living as a copy of yourself. The good news: just as this erosion was slow, reconstruction can be too. It doesn't need to happen all at once. It can be done piece by piece, memory by memory, authentic act by authentic act. Every time you choose truth instead of comfort, every time you honor a feeling instead of suppressing it, every time you take a step toward your inner voice, you recover a piece of yourself. The most dangerous truth for any control system is this: if you still feel something when touching your own truth, you're still there. Maybe fragmented, maybe confused, but not erased. If something inside you still pulses when authenticity is evoked, that's enough. You're not lost. You're in the process of returning. Control of memory is control of identity, and control of identity is control of life. When you can't remember who you were before being molded, before giving in, before forgetting, you become vulnerable. You start depending on external definitions, ready-made labels, foreign narratives. You stop being the author of your own story and become a product of others' plots. But every control system has a weakness. It depends on your collaboration. It needs you to believe there's no other way to live. It needs you to repeat to yourself that it's always been this way, that there's no way to change. The moment you doubt this, just for a second, the spell begins to break. The end of the simulation begins when you remember. You don't need to remember everything. You don't need to be perfect. Just one fragment of true memory is enough to realize there's a difference between what's yours and what was implanted. This moment of lucidity is the turning point. It's the beginning of your freedom. It's the first step back home, to who you always were before all this. If you've made it this far and something in you is different, even if you can't say exactly what, if some old memory came back to the surface, if some uncomfortable question kept echoing, then this video fulfilled its purpose. You don't need to have all the answers now. You just need the courage to keep asking the right questions. The journey back to yourself isn't easy, but it's the only one that really matters. Because in the end, you can conquer the world. But if you lose yourself along the way, what did you really gain? Go back to the beginning. Go back to what's simple. Go back to what's true. Start small. Start today. Start by writing with all your soul. I remember. The rest will come naturally.